Similar to the reasons we just discussed, here are some benefits companies can experience from offshoring. Saves money and makes them more profitable. In business school, we learn that saving $1 is better than selling $1 or getting an additional dollar of sales because of taxes on sales and other factors. Hence, companies place a huge emphasis on cutting costs in any way possible, including offshoring. The money they save can be used to enrich the company's employees. It could be invested in capital, or it might enable them to employ more people. Helps products come to market faster. As mentioned, more workers can increase throughput when managed competently. Also, having workers in other countries tends to speed things up in those countries. Everyone cares more when they stand to benefit. Increases job quality for original or local employees, which increases their satisfaction and loyalty. When used as part of a growth strategy as opposed to a layoff strategy, offshoring some tasks means the local employees get to up-level their work, presumably to tasks that are more important, tasks they will enjoy more, which should increase their satisfaction, morale, loyalty, and all those other good feelings. Provides flexibility to hedge against problems in one country or currency, including your own. Every country runs into problems at some point. Just as diversifying investments lowers risk for the investor, diversifying your workforce and workplace can help lower risk for companies. Here are some ways in which the entire world benefits from offshoring. Helps alleviate poverty and improves the standard of living worldwide. For example, for every job offshored in the U.S., several jobs are created in other countries, not just one. This also means that whenever automation results in job loss in the U.S., the impact is much more severe in some other countries. I remember reading that more workers had lost their manufacturing jobs in recent years in China than had been lost in the U.S. due to automation. Innovation thrives as the playing field gets leveled. As it becomes easier to use resources in other countries, competition for jobs increases, and people are forced to work harder to distinguish themselves in ways that overcome the wage differential. Many believe this can be best accomplished through increased and improved education. Companies who don't want to offshore, but must compete with others who do, are forced to innovate more in order to make up the difference. After all, automating something can be cheaper than hiring any worker anywhere. Reduces the need for immigration, as there's less need to leave home to obtain good jobs with the international companies. Over time, if offshoring continues on its current path, wages across the world will tend to approach equalization, though it will take a very long time before they are actually equal, if that is even possible. As an interesting side note, due to the increased costs associated with offshoring, which offsets some of the savings, offshoring becomes not cost-effective long before wages are equal. Point is, as wages improve in other countries, there's less need for people to leave home for work elsewhere. We no longer have to worry about major power conflict. Perhaps you've heard of the McDonald's effect, the idea that no two countries that both have a McDonald's have ever gone to war with each other. Though not technically or completely correct, it illustrates the point that as we become more interconnected, we desire less to mess things up by fighting each other. I think I read that a Dell computer has parts from hundreds of vendors. These vendors are all over the world and really want to keep Dell's business. If you multiply that by hundreds or thousands of Dells, where many countries come together to produce something, you begin to see how much everyone has to lose from a major war, and this has led some experts to believe that another world war is highly improbable now as a result. Here are some ways offshoring benefits the U.S. specifically, and other countries to some degree. This first point is made by McKinsey, whose research says that the U.S. receives $1.12 back for every dollar it offshores on average. And by the way, my sources are listed at the end of the last module in case you want to see how some of these numbers were calculated. The $1.12 breaks out into direct and indirect benefits. Direct benefits account for 67 cents of the $1.12, and it breaks out as follows. It has three components. Cost savings companies can reinvest to create new jobs. McKinsey values this at 58 cents on the dollar. Countries offshore to buying products to support effort, valued at 5 cents on the dollar. This is referring to the fact that when we do business in other countries, they end up having to purchase things from us like technology and such in order to set up shop. repatriated earnings. Some of the money made in other countries stays in those countries, but some of it flows back to the U.S., and McKinsey values this at 4 cents on the dollar invested in offshoring on average. And the rest is made up by indirect benefits, the rest of the $1.12. And this is a big part of the formula and the argument that offshoring makes more for the U.S. than it costs. And it rests on our history, namely our propensity to re-employ people who have lost their jobs. We have a good track record of creating new jobs one way or another to re-employ those who are displaced by not just offshoring but automation or anything else. And as long as we can assume this will keep happening, McKinsey figures these new jobs add value to our country to the tune of 45 cents for every dollar invested in offshoring. And finally, many developing countries speak English, making it easier for the U.S. to take advantage of the benefits of offshoring. For example, many people in the Philippines and India speak native-level English, and in China, as of the 1990s, children begin learning English in the 3rd grade and some even in the 1st grade. By contrast, most K-12 students in the U.S. don't even have an option to learn Chinese. Here are some additional reasons why offshoring benefits the U.S. particularly. The U.S. has a flexible workforce which makes it easier to hire and redeploy resources. This makes it easier for the U.S. to take advantage of offshoring while mitigating the ill effects of displacement, and we discussed that on the previous slide. The U.S. has more venture capital than most countries, making it easier for companies to absorb the risk of offshoring. In other words, we have a lot of people willing to risk a lot of money, so when businesses of any type don't work out, it may not be the end of the world. This is not the case in many other countries. Rule of law and government resources encourage business by providing a safety net in the event of failures. The ability to declare bankruptcy enables our businesses to take more risks. Sometimes the risks don't pay off, but sometimes they pay off big time, and so a system that allows for risks benefits from the big payoffs more often. Some predict a shortage of millions of workers by 2012, which can be offset by offshoring. Some don't believe in a pending shortage, though many sources agree there will be shortages in some areas. Companies using the H-1B visas to bring specialists in from other countries say they're doing so because of shortages that already exist today. Because the U.S. receives comparatively more foreign direct investment than other countries, being global benefits the U.S. more. And because the U.S. has a huge service trade surplus, that's services as opposed to products where we have a trade deficit, in terms of services, being global with services tends to benefit the U.S. more. And lastly, there are the ways in which offshoring benefits us as individuals. Some things cost less. Actually, a lot of things cost less, and here are just a couple of anecdotes. In the 1960s, food accounted for 1/4 of the average American spending. By 2005, the share was less than 1/7 due to technology as well as offshoring. A 25-inch TV costs $599 in 1976, which is about $2.3 thousand in 2010 dollars. It now costs about $300, again due to both technology and offshoring. My son's Chinese cello, handmade cello, cost a fraction of what a U.S. handmade one would have cost. Companies can serve people 24/7 more easily. Nowadays, if I call support and I get a message stating their hours, I get a little irritated. I guess I've been spoiled. Less desirable jobs become desirable, high-paying careers for people in developing nations. These resources tend to be motivated, engaged, and loyal. There's a difference in attitudes and level of service between someone who is merely enduring a support or similar job for as short a period of time as possible and someone for whom the same job is a worthwhile career.